Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Yang Zhang, and I'm the founder and curator of RNH Space. Thank you for joining our online seminar, Flowing Methods, Artistic or Creative Research and Practice on the Waters, which is organized along RNH Space current exhibition, Liquid Homes, supported by Design Trust. Architect and educator Su Chang is my co-host today, and he's the project lead of the architectural research that Liquid Homes is based on. Su Chang, maybe you can say hi to everyone.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Okay, so today's seminar will look into research methodology in art and design and its significance in unraveling forgotten or untold stories around the waters and beyond. We are honored to have Lee Kai Chung, Tan Yue, Xiaoshi Qin, and Tamotsu Ito as the speakers today to each discuss the interplay between their research and practice, then have a conversation together and answer questions from the audience. Now, please allow me to introduce all the speakers before we start. Our first speaker, Lee Kai Chung, performs artistic research on historiography, ideology, and time transcendence of emotion. Chung has developed an archival methodology that extends to research-based creative practices, and he's now the co-editor of monograph, The Impossibility of Archives, Theory and Experience in or from Asia. In 2017, he initiated the displacement hexology to examine human conditions and their geopolitical relations arising from dispersion and material flows. His presentation today will be partially related to the last chapter of the displacement hexology to talk about reclamation and source of sand for the Lantau Tomorrow Vision, as well as his recent personal experience of smuggling through islands in southern Hong Kong. Our second speaker, Tan Yue, is the associate curator of Guangdong Times Museum in Guangzhou. She has been worked closely with the curatorial team for exhibition making, research, and project development to the museum since 2013. Today, she will present her research around islands and archipelagos in the Indo-Pacific. The research will be conducted into a 4-chapter exhibition, which regards the world of islands as cosmology that diverse from current civilization of anthropocene and terracentrism, and tries to unveil the universal experiences, tension, and gray area between human civilization and nature, which constantly shape each other. Our third speaker, Xiaoshi Qin, is an artist based in Guangzhou, working in sculpture, installation, sound, and performances. Graduated with an MFA visual arts degree from Columbia University in 2015, Xiaoshi has exhibited in museums and institutions around the world. She runs an art gossip magazine named Roofless Lantern. Today, she will share her projects focusing on the South China pirates and legends from the mouth of Pearl River, including her recent work that chases Pearl River Delta mythologies in the psychological landscape, and how people without a home on land are able to build their own on the water. She will also demonstrate how one's experiences can be research material and how detouring can be a method. Our last speaker, Tamotsu Ito, is a first-class registered architect in Japan and the principal of Tamotsu Ito Architecture Office, a global design practice based in Gifu, Japan. With the strong spatial belief to simple hybrid across the regions, the office has designed various spaces for better lives of people and communities and better built environments. Ito is now the junior associate professor at Nagoya Zokei University. Today, he will move beyond the geographic definition of the waters to arrive at discussions through the lens of material flow and reinterpretation, and introduce his projects under the term restructuring. Now, without further ado, let's first welcome Chung to give his talk.
Thank you, Yang. Thank you, Suchan, for inviting me to this seminar. It has been a long time for me to speak in English, but yeah, it is fun. It will be fun. Today, I'm going to share one of my fun projects. Let me share my screen. That I started in 2020, and I exhibited part of it in last year in Parasite, Hong Kong. So I would consider this is not a complete research, but rather that it is like a preliminary research, because it's as Yang introduced me in the very beginning. It's about reclamation, it's about artificial island, about Lantau Tomorrow. So I would consider this project, I estimate it will be completed maybe in 10 years, like until 2030, as it is stated by the Hong Kong government. It will be completed by 2030. So this project is called Sea Sand Home. The English name is not like grammatically correct, but rather it's about sand. It's about marine sand. The sand we take the enterprise or the government taken from the sea. But before I start, I just don't want to really share this like first. Before I start, like recently, the Chinese government kind of like stopped exporting natural sand to Taiwan just because of the recent events in Taiwan. I think like most of you have been following this news, which is like quite important to the Far East, the East Asia, but like in fact, like I want to share, like in fact, like China has been importing a lot of sand from the other countries. Like I think like many of you have known since 20 years ago, like the GDP of China like, rise up very rapidly. Part of it because of the infrastructure, like many new infrastructure projects raised by the Chinese government, and also the One Belt One Road and high-speed train, like all kinds of the transportation systems. So like all kinds of that construction need concrete, sand. Like sand is like an essential part of the construction. So in China, such a large country, but still it needs to import sand for many reasons. Like some of the reasons they are because of the economic concerns. If they spend a lot of resources, human resources to mine sand, maybe it is rather more expensive than buy sand from the Southeast Asia countries. So I think like for me, part of my argument is like why China imports so much sand, but at the same time it will export sand, like because like according to the basic like economic supply and demand theory, it doesn't make a complete sense, right? But at the same time, it is more like a diplomatic and political concern, because if for the project I want to talk about, the infrastructural projects, Lantau Tomorrow Vision, majority of the sand was imported from is going to be imported from China, and also the third runway system, 機場第三條跑道 is also the majority of the sand imported from China as well. So so that is like a for me that is like contradictory like a decision like made by the Chinese government. So that's why it become my major argument why it happens in China. So like recently, but like China stopped exporting sand to Taiwan, but that is like for Taiwan, maybe that is not the majority of the sand for the infrastructure in Taiwan, because they can buy from the Southeast other countries, and also they can mine their own sand in the sea. But it will involve another like a higher cost. Maybe I can talk later. So like recently, I keep asking myself why I'm interested in about like doing artwork related to waters, borders, and also natural resources, especially for the Sea Sand Home project. like I may share my personal experience, but maybe it's not 100% relevant to my artistic practice. But like I lived in China in the last 2 years, and I have a cat, and I did a little bit of research. If I send my cat back to Hong Kong, my cat has to be in quarantine for half a year, like 6 months, at the border. So but when I go to Taobao and also some online services and some smugglers, they can provide a service that they can take the cat from mainland China and then to Hong Kong with their own way. I have to say this is not 100% legal, but when I did that research and asked about the like smugglers about their service, and sometimes they say, oh, it's not a good time. 風聲很緊. There are a lot of like immigration officers, like Marine Force, they patrol along the coast and also the South China Sea. So before Xi Jinping went to Hong Kong for the handover ceremony in the 1st of July, before that, a lot of smugglers, they're being caught. As you can see from these two news, like smugglers get caught because of they try to smuggle like a cash to Macau, and also some commodity like a computer parts. But I highlight one phrase, 內河, in a river. When you talk about in a river, it's particularly about this area. In the west of Hong Kong waters, like this is the border of Hong Kong waters, like a vaguely border. It's not like a border across the land, because like water is floating, right? So this is like an approximate border of Hong Kong. But when like most of the time, the ships, like when they leave that border, it means that it will enter the sea area of China or in the public waters. But this is the I have to say this is like a very popular sea route to China, and it makes why Guangzhou to be one of the most important city in Guangdong and also South China, just because it will save a lot of time, and also it will cost less money and more safe. So if the smuggler wants to smuggle something from Guangdong to Hong Kong, this is like the first priority choice. But like, of course, the inner river is very, like, it actually is under very high security by the immigration. So like most of the smuggler would not go this way. So according to my research, like that smuggler will go from Jiangmen, like the west Guangdong, and then go to the public waters, and then all the way down, and then like they will go to Macau, or they will move along the islands where they have their hideouts. So like every time, like I have a friend, she smuggled a dog from mainland China to Hong Kong. It would take more than 12 hours, but the sea route would not take that long. The transportation would not take that long. So the only reason why it would take that long, because they have to hide like in the islands, the remote islands without any people. So they would go this way and then all the way to the West Hong Kong, where they have the warehouse to collect all these like animals and smuggled goods, and then at the end they would give it to the customer. And on this map, I also highlight another route, which is how my father went to Hong Kong during the 50s. It's also like, first of all, he have to travel by land and then go to the like east of Shenzhen, where is approximately like a Dai'awan, the nuclear plant in Guangdong, and then take a boat to Tamun. So this is like for Hong Kong, like whenever you enter the area of the Hong Kong waters, you're safe, like pretty much safe, because you can land any of the island and hide yourself. So like it's so fascinating that like this route, like they provide the border is not solid. At the same time, it provide area or space for people to do like their own thing. And I have projects in 2020, which is like a first project of the hassology, like displacement hassology. I will not go too deep into that project, but I try to repeat the sea route of maybe I briefly introduce it. Like during the Second World War, like the Japanese confiscate all like 12 bronze sculptures in Hong Kong, like namely Queen Victoria statues, or the royal family statues, the George V statues. Go back to Japan and then melt it into metal and make it into bullets and tanks, right? Things like that. So after the war, the Allied powers, they discovered those bronze statues and brought it back to Hong Kong. Like long story short. So in this project, I try to reenact the sea routes that the Japanese army brought the bronze sculptures from Hong Kong to Japan. And I allowed I have an open call and allow the people to board on the boat and go to the public waters with me. So by the time it was the instance where when there are 12 Hong Kong people that get caught in the public waters in the north of Hong Kong, close to Shenzhen. So for me, like exploring this kind of like a vaguely borders of waters, it means quite a lot, and also how to parallel what is happening in like right now. Sorry, I talk too much about like other stuff. So about Lantau Tomorrow Vision. So oh, I still have 3 minutes. So actually, like this is a project I started a couple years ago. I wonder where the sand in Hong Kong comes from, like the sand in the beach, the sand for constructions. In Hong Kong, it mostly comes from China. So but like as many of you may know, whenever there's a government project, Lantau Tomorrow Vision is the most well-known amount of it. So they have to procure the best contractor with the best quality and the cheapest material. So but as you can see, like I make a graph about the sand price. The sand price rise up very high, like in April 2018. But after but it was before the Hong Kong government announced the Lantau Tomorrow Vision project. So and as you can see, the price of sand like rise up so like largely in 2018. Maybe I have to skip these. So I wonder like where the sand comes from, and I discovered like the main part of it comes from China and also from Guangxi, Qinzhou. So I went to Qinzhou for field research. Like this is pretty much where the Lantau Tomorrow Vision will be, like the artificial island will be built in the east of Lantau Island. So this is in the Hong Kong waters. And I went to Qinzhou for field research. Qinzhou is the west of Guangdong province, and it's pretty much like close to Vietnam. So like this is the city, and this is the area that is being authorized by the Chinese government. Like maybe I have to talk about one thing like before I end my section. So in China, natural resources is not free. like it's not free for the people to take it, especially sand, because it's a scarce good. So like a couple of years ago, when the Chinese government went to diminish environmental damage, just because like many people mine sand without like permission get from the government or local government. So it caused a lot of problems. Like for example, the seabed of the rivers get very low, so it will have very serious flooding during the summer, like things like that. So whenever an enterprise want to mine sand, it have to get through the Chinese government, but it's not that easy. But like for example, if Hong Kong wants to build an artificial island, it has to get the permission from the central government of China, just because they have to get the permission to buy the sand from China. So Qinzhou is maybe I spend like 2 more minutes to talk about this place. Like Qinzhou is like one of the most important trade center since the Song Dynasty around 1,200 years ago. So it was pretty much the important trading, the open ports in the whole China, opened to the foreign exchanges, particularly open to Southeast Asia countries. And that city remains in, like for me, like the visual impression of it remains in the 80s. Like it feels like I walk into the like time tunnel and then travel back to the past. Like a lot of communist architecture, a mixed style of Vietnamese communist and Chinese communist. But right now it's being turned, like it has like a very serious gentrification going on, because the local government is very poor, and unless they can sell sand to other countries or to Hong Kong or like to like other East Asian countries, but like the local government is very poor, so it has to invest money to turn it into like a travel spot. And like I discovered, like there are a lot of these kind of like huge marine sand mines along the coast. Like it is beyond like a life form scale. Like the human is just like a tiny. And I flew my drone like over a few kilometers across the shore and find like there are a lot of these kind of like marine sand mining ships, like right there. But at the same time, like this is the official sand mining spots. But at the same time, the local government built a lot of like infrastructure in order to extend the coast, because the this marine sand processing plants or factory, they have to be away from the inland, because it will cause a lot of the pollution. So I drove with my driver, and then we drove on an artificial dock, like a dock built just because they want to mine more sand. Like so I kind of like driving on the waters to right here, as in order to get as close to the sea mining spots. So yeah, sorry I skipped too much, but the outcome of the research like comprises of like the timeline, the materials, and I make like a field sculpture which imitating the silo of the sea mining plants. And also I extract sand from sea, because like in the sea you may know that seawater contains sodium chloride, salt. But in constructions, sodium chloride corrode the inner structure of the building if they do not treat the sand, the marine sand properly. So in like some of the time, I saw the news in China that the illegal sand miners, they did not process the marine sand properly. So whenever those sand, they were sold in the markets, and the property developer, they use those like marine sands for constructions. At the end, the construction will deteriorate in a very short period of time, just because there's a sodium chloride inside the sand. So I extract these, like, maybe I use the first image. I extract the salts from the sand and also the seawater, and then make it like a tiny sculpture, just like a parasite onto this structure. So I do not have the image, but there's like these kind of like a sand crystal being like pent on the pipes. And I also like publish like a small booklet for this project, ongoing project, which like comprise of the interview, transcript, like timeline, things like that. So sorry, I do not like talk too well, and I go too fast, but I do not want to take too much time. So yeah, maybe we can talk more about it in the discussion section. Thank you.
Thank you, Chung. Yeah, it's totally fine with the time. And yeah, we hope to hear more from you in the roundtable session, because you got very rich materials. And if anyone have any questions about Chung's projects, please leave your questions in the chat box. Now let's welcome Tan Yue to give her talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you so much for inviting me to share my recent research about island and archipelago. So it's actually an exhibition still in the preparation, and also because of the research is still going on. So, and we have only 15 minutes a day, and I might not able to get into too much details. But I will try to provide the whole pictures and sharing some of the idea and cases I learned from the artists, and also the curatorial methods I've been using. So start from how I get into islands. So it's pretty much related to Times Museum long-term research of the global south and the issue of the decolonization and alternative modernity. So in 2020, we organized a trip to with artists, curator, researchers to a series portal city, to visiting those historical and science are in making. Find the immaterial actors, bodies, narrative was submerged by current nationalism, liberalism, and imperialism. In 2021, we land on a small island called Shangchundou near Taishan. This small island showing substantial historical layer and complex reality that appealing the possibility and mission that differ from continents, which across my interest to how to know more about the island around us. So earlier this year, we made another research trip to Hainan Island to dig out more aspects. In the same time, we all know that COVID-19 pandemic and travel restriction losing the process of the globalization, tearing the world apart and identify the serious geopolitical crisis. People say we are now in the era of separation, like many isolating islands on the endless sea. They might start to think whether island can be seen as a new metaphor for us to understand the world today. From that, what kind of the critical critical and speculative futures do we need? So I start my research to get to know the artists who conduct research and practice around ocean and island. Here is the list of the topics and issues I came across for now, and also made some of the classification. But while the research gets deeper, more topics appears, I realized that I might need a tool to help me navigating all those rich material and to build a curatorial narrative. Eventually, I find my inspiration from a map or cartography. But why a map? We know that development of modern cartography evolved with a great discovery with geography or in the era of great voyage. Actually, at that time, map is no longer only for scientific or military use or to clarify the national border, but already have a strong political tendency and is always medium for certain culture pattern and showing people's desire. For example, this map is an antique map made by Dutch in 1598, known as the Spice Map. There is a lot of research around this famous map, and what made this map so special is point out all the natural resources. Apparently, mostly are the spices at that time for the islands of the Southeast Asia region. But the map is never about showing people how to reach this spice island, but actually one of the most popular souvenirs at time for people showing their wealth in investment on the spice island. So what we can see from this map are the perception and desire to the natural resource and impulse of in the impulse to the newfound colonial market. So learning from this map, the invention of new cartography techniques reflect the new inquiry of geography cognition, as well as the changing of production mode, which refer to technology, land, nature's resource, labor, transportation, and markets, and more. It also made me think of other map and cartography techniques or technology we use today and in the history. And are there any cultural pattern behind? And what kind of desire and vision were presented? So I started using the map as my navigator to the research and a lens for a deep reading to artist practice I've been focused on. In fact, I found some artist work are actually related to map making and cartography in many different ways. So I will give some example today. So the first map showing the area of the ring of fire or the frame of Pacific. In geography, the ring of fire refers to the zone of shifting and colliding tectonic planets at the edge of the Pacific Ring, where 90% of world earthquakes and volcano explosions happen. It explains that formation of the islands, but also making this area one of the most deadly regions on Earth. Indonesian artists Yvonne Ahmad and Tita Selina, they start a 10-year-long research project since 2016, traveling through the island states on the rings of fire. They have found uncanny correspondence between the drilled tectonic conflicts under the ground and political unrest above the ground. On the journeys, they intervene on pressing issues such as urban development, environmental disaster, colonial history, and overexploitation of the human and ecology resource. In addition to exploring how islanders confront geological violence and whether an effective mode of mutual aid exists in a highly unstable environment. The second map here is the sailing charts from Marshall Island. It's one of the greatest anthropology findings of Austronesian civilization. According to genetic and linguistic research, scientists believe that Austronesian people are original from Fujian. They crossed the Taiwan Strait thousands of years ago and began their expansion across the ocean. Their footprint covered the whole Indo-Pacific region, all the way east to the Micronesia and west to the Madagascar in Africa. Their globalization was long before the Western began their age of the Great Voyage. Although most of the sea traveling skills are lost today, but these sailing charts gave a small window to have a peek of their incredible knowledge on ocean. Unlike the GPS coordinating system we are using today to point out a specific location, the chart actually provide a method to read the ocean. Tanoi Havini is an artist from Papua New Guinea. Her family are from the Hakul tribe in Bougainville Island, which is one of the remaining Austronesian ethnic group. As an indigenous artist, most of her works are able to tracing back and passing her ancestor knowledge inherited. For example, this case, she makes it with her indigenous community, the Hakul community, collectively. There is another piece from her I'm particularly interested in is the project she collaborated with the TBA 21 Academy and the Smith Ocean Institute. She has been invited to a scientific research vessels. The vessel is using the latest multi-beam sonar technology to collecting data in order to complete a high-resolution images of the seafloor and the Solomon Island. Tanoi spent a month on the vessels and worked with the scientists closely, but still believed that the techniques of measuring and mapping the space with sound has been using by her ancestor and for thousands of years. She worked with indigenous museum from home using sonar detect audio clip from the vessel and traditional ocean traveling changs and instrument playing to compose a 22-channel sound piece through an Asian method, call and respond, in order to bring in two dialogues, a very different, in order to bring in dialogue to different cognitive modes, contemporary technology and indigenous knowledge. Here is the third map. It's actually two satellite images of one island in the South China Sea. We used to believe that sea was the starting point of mankind's global imagination, but today, globalization has somehow accelerated the intensification of nation boundary. And this intensification has extended to the sea, which was previously believed to be free, borderless and free. So I think Chung has already gave a good example on his research, but I also would like to share the other cases from artist Charles Lam Yok Wing. He began his work and research on his Sea State series in 2005 with the intention of formation the idea of a sea and land island nation of Singapore. Through discussing how state be declared, transporting the field is coastal and remove island with sand from warrior source in order to increase the size of the country. The series explore how this sea area declared as a land reflect the imagination of evolution of the state, its weight of the governance, as well as that the geopolitical formation. Going back to these two satellite images, I recently read a very interesting essay written by Erin Huang, who's assistant professor of East Asian study at Princeton University. She reminds us while looking at this artificial island building competition in the South China Sea or other area, don't forget to think who took these images. It's the US satellite infrastructures of a civilian inherited from the Cold War era. Both of these state-led forces together making the open sea a battlefield that would define the meaning of sovereignty. The final map I'm sharing today is the speculative images of sea level rise. It's actually a simulating program that showing how many land will disappear in what level the sea will rise. So it actually reminds me of an old movie called Water World. It's actually quite a pretty cliche Hollywood post-apocalyptic action movie in the 90s. The setting of the movie is in the distant future. The polar ice cap has completely melted. The sea level has risen over 7,000 meters. All continents on Earth are covered by water. The remain of human civilization live in a rugged floating community known as atolls. Having long forgotten about living on land, but they still believe the myth. There is a dry land exists somewhere in the endless ocean. So the whole story is about looking for this mythological land. The similar setting can be seen from Vietnamese film artist Andrew Wan's latest video works called The Boat People. But unlike Waterworld, Chuan's speculative futures is based on actual historical event, which is the Vietnamese refugee crisis. Forced by, in his story, the descendants of refugees forced by the water and politics to the sea, because the last became the last human remain on Earth. So the other similarity to from these two images, you can see the people living the futures. They have the character have a similar like outfit and looks of the pirate. There's a very interesting study about pirates from the sea. So I think if you relate it to Xiaoshi's research, so I probably won't speak too much on this, but I'll leave it to Xiaoshi. So that's my sharing for today, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Tan Yue, for discussing the historical and socio-political issues in the Indo-Pacific regions through island studies. It's very interesting. If anyone has any questions regarding Tan Yue's projects, please leave it in the chat box. And as Tan Yue mentioned, Xiaoshi can pick up from telling the pirates story, and we can't wait for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the invitation, Jiang and also Su Chang. And today I am going to talk about my research method of detouring. So because of that, I would like to kind of renovate the way of talking through my PowerPoint. I might stay silent and let the work talk for themselves. I might be speaking against the work, or I might be talking over the work that it's non-related. So let's start and take the time and see how it will go. And as I mentioned earlier, my research method is very non-linear. So I like to collect data first. Data here means mostly kind of knowledge or objects that I kind of hunter-gathered from either books, maps, or just the landscape. And I will show you some of them later in person too. And after that, I try to find patterns out of it. And a lot of my work is about mythologies in ProViver data. And what you're seeing here is an image from a performance piece I did with Hera Chen in 2019 in Savvy Contemporary in Berlin. That is about the Seven Sisters, mythologies of the ProViver area and how they kind of empower themselves. But then you can also see that in here, I'm actually making a very giant monumentary sculpture piece that is kind of a symbol of my understanding of this area. It is periphery, but it is also a very important place that is the border itself. It is, it's kind of a gate where you enter what Kai Chung just mentioned, the inner rivers of China, and separating the inner river to the outer sea. And this is what we're seeing in this landscape, the Humen Bridge, which is also the Tiger Gate Bridge. And this is exactly the place where in history was actually used to define what is the inner river of China and the outer sea. And also a lot of maritime war had took place here. So important site. And so it kind of developed into this piece called Siren Told You So. And so I made this sculpture piece where Hera wrote poetries to several journalists who lost their life by uncovering the truth. And I also made those horns that are war horns, but they are also part beta fish. So they kind of are symbols of like the second half of a mermaid. I think the war horn symbol is very important here because if you're in a marginalized community, you might feel the disaster coming faster than the other people. But then because the place that you are, it's very hard for you to convince anyone about your theory. So it kind of become you're trapped in this very weird Cassandra situation where you are blessed with the ability to tell the truth, but then you're also cursed with without the ability to convince any people. And I think this Cassandra situation is happening a lot of the time, current days. And so, yeah. And I think now we have entered into an age of generalized homelessness. So which means homelessness is no longer defined as your situation in the society and or just the reality, but it's more like everybody has become a little bit more likely to lose their home, but the home in the sense of not only a place of belonging, but it's also a symbolic place that can be very easily grabbed from us. So it is, we're facing the reality of this displacement in all forms that has been brought by virus, ideology, social economic issues, health issues, and then it's amplified by gender, class, race, and many other dispositions, depending on where you are in this intersectional relationships in the society. But then in this age, I think it is very important to talk about the idea of home. And so I think it's so like for me, the South China Pirates are a very good group that I look up to, who are able to create a home for themselves when they're living in the age that they were not given an easy place on the land. So to begin with, a lot of the South China Pirates, they came from what we're seeing here is the map of the mouth of Pearl River covering the current Shenzhen, which was Xinan before, and then we can see maybe a little part of Punyu, and then there's Dongguan and Zhongshan. Well, there all of these places were actually a lot of the original hometown of the pirates. But then many of the pirates are from the ethnicity group called the Dan people. So they already kind of are like living on the water. And then there were a lot of discrimination against them. For example, there are rules that they're not allowed to bury on land. So when they pass away, their body can only kind of be buried in the sand near the along the coast of the Pearl River and the sea outside. So it is kind of a very hard life for them, but then they started to organize, and kind of there was at one point 10 group of them, and they're separated by the color of the flags. So the biggest one is the red flag pirate gang that was led by the pirate Zheng Yi, Zhang Yat, and then they have gained power when they were in Vietnam, fighting for the dynasty there. And at the same time, we need to be reminded that it's during kind of the Qing dynasty there. It is an isolationist age because there was a sea ban, meaning that all the civilians are not allowed to go on the sea. But then there are those fishing people who depends on their life depends on like going out to the sea and just going around. So so just like any time, there are some kind of exceptions that you can kind of make those space for yourself. And so I kind of discovered their story by map reading as well before at the beginning of the pandemic, because we can't really go anywhere. I found a lot of interesting places around where I lived. And they have interesting names. For example, the pillow safe, which is an ancient piece of furniture where you hide your important belongings. And there are also like places, for example, like here where you're seeing, it's called Dragon Cave Island. And on this Dragon Cave Island, you can also find like this hill that is called the definition block hill. So they're all related to objects, but they're like very ancient sounding and specific ones. So I kind of look into them and found a lot of interesting stories. And going to those places sometimes are full of surprises. And this is one of the places I went in a nearby hill that is after there it looks kind of like a crime scene, but I'm not sure. There's those police lines, and you can see like strangely there's also like those Tibetan scripture flags that are just kind of there. And there's a butterfly-shaped clam that just died in the middle of the lake. And then later I found out those clams were actually referring back to the mountain that we just talked about, the divination block mountain. The divination block, those kind of blocks that you use when you're asking about the future in front of a god. It's actually used by the South China Sea pirates. So the red flag gang had a ship that is actually a temple. So you have a ship that is a temple, and then they will go in every time when they're going to war. They ask the goddess Sanpo on this boat temple to see if they actually should go into this war or not. So if they're like open facing up, it kind of means the goddess is just laughing and not giving you the answer. If it's closed, it means she's angry. And then if it's one up and one's up and facing down, it means she's here and she's happy about your option and you're good to go. So and a little bit of my family background. I have an ancestor who's a Taoist monk, and there's a family story about how there is a fortune that he left that's hidden in the summer palace in Hebei. And while nobody ever found anything, but this story really intrigued me. And that's when I heard about there is also some treasure stories of the South China pirates. I was very intrigued. And so on this island called Dragon Cave Island, there is some actual cave that's believed to be where the pirates hid their treasure. But and also those stories are very common. It's also in Hong Kong's Changjiao and also in the Shangchuan Shangqundou that is mentioned by T. Wright earlier. And so I decided to kind of make an exhibition where I am hiding some of the objects into the landscape that I was going to, and referring back to the South China pirate stories. And I invited my friend Black Wang to be the curator of this show. And here are some of the works from there. And this is again the Tiger Gate Bridge. And during the British and China Navy War, this place was actually blocked by those chains as an attempt by the Qing Navy to stop the British to go in, but then they succeeded. So it's a very important site, but then there are also contemporary stories that are very interesting. For example, this bridge was at some point shaking like a wave that is, and at some point there were also news stories about how the smugglers got in trouble near these areas that have to dump all the pig feet into the water. So 4 tons of pork kind of ended up on the border that we're kind of on the shore that we're seeing here. So in my opinion, I think those stories that are temporary and those historical stories kind of exist in the same place. They're communicating through the landscape and manifest themselves in the objects that are seen here. And I want to recreate this kind of experience through art making. And this is another piece. It's kind of hard to see here, but there are a ring that's hidden in it. And on the ring, it sets the place where the divine block laughs and cries. And then again, this piece is, I am, like I said, I'm like a hunter-gatherer. So I can see that sometimes I go into the landscape and I found things. For example, this is a piece of shard that I found in the nearby mountain. There are a bunch of those. I think they're like full of information. For example, this one, the circle thing, like we do not have it anymore, just the way that it has a like unglazed circle near here. It's because that's how they were stacked up to be fired. And then, so a lot of those historical stories left marks or trace through objects that we can kind of still deciphered. So I was thinking, what kind of story are we telling other people later? Because we are already at some kind of a crisis time now. So I'm thinking about art making as a way of story making, but long-term storytelling. So I chose kind of ceramics as my medium as well here, with some digital print that's fired there. I think a lot of digital prints, we don't know how they're gonna survive, maybe on plastics, but a lot of them that we have now, even GitHub kind of have a big backup data center somewhere. A lot of those memories of human might be lost. And I think I sometimes think about like art making as a way against it. This is a butterfly that I left in the woods. And because I go there a lot, sometimes you just see a lot of marks of people or animals who were there before, or like maybe even like gods, I don't know, that have left traces that are unspoken messages. For example, here where I put my work, see on the tree, there's a mark of a cloud. And we don't know what kind of animal it is. And the butterfly that left there was eaten by a bird very quickly. So I think in some way, it's like writing to the landscape through history with objects. And I also place marks in the road so people know how to find a way to find objects. And this is the Dragon Cave Island right now. It has been turned into a port because of the building of the Tiger Gate bridge that we just saw earlier. It has stopped those bigger cargo ships to enter the Pearl River that's beyond the part of the bridge, because how it's just a pretty low structure, and then not all the ship can enter. So it makes the Dragon Cave Island nowadays become an important port for all the big ships to unload their cargo and to dispense into like smaller ships to be carried into Guangzhou and beyond. But in the mythology before now, the Dragon Cave Island was actually, according to the Dongguan, Dongguan local history book, it's actually the place where the South Sea Dragon lives. And on the moonless night of every month, the 5th of the lunar month, this place at night will be lit up by fire, and it will become a sea market where the siren and also the other mythology features to trade the pearl that is their tears. So, but those stories, if I didn't go there, I think those are very small scale stories that can very easily to be lost, because they're kind of just randomly written on some kind of temple or something. If you're just, if you don't have the time to go there, you just miss it. And there is also a temple here that is called the Nine King Dragon Temple. And I look into it and find out apparently there was 9 dragon kings that have transcend the Pearl River's water into the sky, and then they were believed that they had went to Hong Kong and become what's Kowloon. But then now scholars believe what's described there are actually sea tornadoes. So we ended up with a temple that's built for sea tornadoes here. And so I kind of, because I've taken from the mountain, I've taken those objects, I want to give back, and I sometimes like create objects to be hidden there. But then the next chapter of the show is like, I started to make those new pieces that are kind of like treasure map. And it's also kind of like the cards that we collect, like the yes cards, but they're not for actors or actresses, but they are for informations about this area. And this is what we're seeing. And I did actually make a pillow box. So I think it's so interesting to be the name of the hill that is really close to the Dragon Cave Island. I think so it might actually be where the treasure is hidden if there are, but I think it's very unlikely, because if you are if you're not allowed a home on the land, why would you leave your treasure on the land? And the Dragon Cave Island, and this is nearby, but it is another Qing Dynasty ruin that used to be part of the Cannon site, I think. Yeah. And this is a poetry that I found on the Dragon Cave Island that's written by a sailor and in 1992. And it says that in the past 10 years of my life, I'm full of regret of not making a name. And there's a lot of grand plans in my heart, but there's no place for me to realize it in the small room of a boat. And so, yeah, this kind of narrative is what I'm kind of trying to look for in the work. And this is my treasure map as well. Those are all the works that I had at some point hidden in the mountain. This is also a piece of ancient artifact that is unearthed in Guangzhou, Han Dynasty urns that are kind of they were a part of the kitchen set, but then it have become ritualist when they're placed into like someone's afterlife. And this is another piece that I did for show currently in UCCA Dune. I'm showing it just because I'm still using this same method of exchanging objects with landscape kind of narrative here. And then this is the biggest piece of object that I ever collected from the wild, from Jingdezhen with help with some people there from a factory. But then I want to end my presentation with an old piece of mine. And this is from an old local newspaper that is from 11 years ago. And the title is Home, something that you always carried with you. And I think the idea about creating your own home is so important to me. Sometimes I forgot about it. But then there are other times when you're sleeping in my childhood bed, but I still feel like I am on a boat that is sailing in an endless ocean of uncertainty. But then I remember like my younger self. This was done during the Asia game of 2010. There are a lot of areas of Guangzhou that were under demolition. So I went to study the architecture structures and started to make sculptures that are based on those structures. And then together with some friends of mine, we carried this through a lot of different places of Guangzhou. And so I think in this age when displacement is so easy and could happen to anyone, we have to always remember there are some power within ourselves or us as a community of just carrying our home. Something that's very heavy, but it can be just something that is so hard to give up. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Xiaoshi, for selecting such an important angle to have this theological reading of the oceanic areas and both people in the southern China and the contemporary home situations. And Alexa has a question for Xiaoshi. Maybe you can answer it later in the roundtable session. Now let's welcome Tamotsu Ito. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for invitation, Chansu and Yang. Today, I'd like to talk about some of my work and my methodology under the title Stagecraft of Hybrid as a flowing method to design. And I have a practice based in Gifu, Japan, which has actually no ocean. But our projects range from the scale of products, furniture to the scale of the public architecture and places. The term simple and hybrid often comes to my mind. Then now I can say it as my design approach. The thing is that the meaning of them is not really what they tend to be literally understood. The notion of the hybrid comes from the Bruno Latour, and the simplicity is close to what Robert Venturi mentioned in his Bible, speaking about the simplicity in architecture of Lee Kai, meaning saying that simplicity with inner complexity. The relationship between simplicity and hybridity is entwined by repeating two steps through the design process. One, finding a state of hybrid in a simple object, event, or aspect. And two, hybridizing this simple hybrid. In his actor network theory, Latour reveals a limit of the clear cause and effect or strict equation of modern world by regarding everything as an actor. If we see the world like this, we find ourselves in the non-modern world where everything, including yourself, is in an entwined network. This is where everything can be understood as a hybrid of nature and society. Latour introduced two states of the actor. One is intermediary, which comprises the modern world. Another one, which is right side, is mediation, which can be an actor of non-modern world. My approach is really about how one aspect of the design can have a multiple relationship with other aspects. By seeing very simple things or design decisions in several different ways, we could find a state of hybrid. And I accumulate these decisions to complete architecture, which means hybridizing simple hybrid. If we see the connection between each element as an issue to solve, architecture made of mediation, which is on the right side, can achieve the richness with fewer elements. Then, when we look at its architecture as a whole, we can see that it also creates a mediation in a larger society. And through this lens, I quickly introduced one of my recent projects called Strawberry Shed and Fields. And then I recently presented this project as under the theme of the restructuring what is available. This is a strawberry shop and the packing place put together with a playing field for the kids of the clients and the visitors for the strawberry shop. The client is actually my friend from my junior high school. And with the extremely limited construction budget, our design process was to discover what are freely available or what are cheaply available for the building materials as much as possible. And the first main material was the client's old vinyl houses, curved pipes, which is made out of the steel, a light beige steel. This is transformed into the building's roof structure and benches, which I will show later. And then, and this is how the site is comprised of, and then almost a quarter of the site is used for the building. And then you can see the curved roofed shape for the shop space and the parking space. And then the vinyl houses curved roof shape, which comprise the U shape as an original structure. The half side is flipped to make a S shape to create the big, both big scale and the small scale. You can see the coexistence of the space for the kids or like a shops as a human scale, and just next to it, you can see the bigger scale for the parking work. And then first material is steel pipe, and then we have two other big actors in this project. The second one is more than 10,000 pieces of dead stock concrete blocks, which turned to be available, hearing from my friend's friend for free. He said that you can take it as much as you want. And then the third material were the off-cut pieces of the CLT structure, cross-laminated timber structure of other giant office buildings. I asked the sawmill company located in the countryside of the Gifu prefecture, and then they were dealing almost all over Japan. Many big companies rely on their techniques and the technologies to deal with such kind of industrial materials, and then the big companies make so giant structure made out of CLT, and then so what is left at that sawmill's factory were actually off-cut, but very big pieces, which is enough for this project's entire floor structure, like spanning 1.2 meter and 6.5 meter. And then they say it as off-cut pieces. And then using these main materials and other things which are freely available or like easily available from the DIY stores, or like something from the leftover from the other projects of our office, or other businesses of their client. We assembled and did a kind of the bricolage, and then create the architecture and then structure for the playground. And then our architect, how we design as architect is how we assemble different things which comes from the different industries. And then we propose the hybridizing the joint details of the vinyl house structure and then timber structure as a kind of the authentic architecture techniques. And then the other fun fact was that the older brother of the client also owned this truck with the crane. So it was possible for us to carry such a big off-cut pieces from the factory to the site. And this is how the materials were carried into the site. And then we have built this project with almost with the client himself, with the help of the carpenter friend, who was also our friend from the junior high school. And this is how we assembled. And then recently we could open this place, and they sell the smoothie or like ice or like a strawberry juice. I hope you see what matters to me in kind of a consistent lines of thoughts. I have been interested in both technological things and also social things. And in my understanding, these are the same through the lens of the simplicity and hybridity. This thought is scale-free, and I enjoy back and forth in many aspects in architecture design to create architecture open to the others, which I hope is in line with the today's seminar and also the exhibitions entitled Flowing Method and the Liquid Forms. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe Yang, we can start the discussion. Maybe I can first by asking our speakers one question, and then we can also see what kind of questions or comments we have from the audience. It was actually almost impossible to give any summary because of the diversity of the discipline we have heard and then the type of projects that we have been hearing tonight. But one thing I noticed that it's interesting how for each of the speakers tonight, your practice, you actually start by a kind of act of collecting. So collecting different types of raw materials or data. For example, Kai Chung's research start by collecting these kind of news or government archive or these kind of political history of both the materials and then the practice of the material, and then you go into the site for fieldwork, or for TY you have these collections of the map and start to make sense of them. And then when I see you start to build up your narrative for your curatorial projects, actually a lot of these artists, they also have these the map as an artifact or as a kind of ingredients in their own project. So your collection of them, your own mapping becomes a mapping of the different types of maps in themselves. And for Xiaoshi, you talk about detouring, but then you detour into some other stuff. But then one thing I was really interested is that you are collecting a lot of objects in the field. What you're saying, gathering things in the landscape. So, and then for Tamotsu, because I know you for quite some years now, I know you always have this method of bringing everything you observe on site or from the context, and then start to just lay them out in front of you, like the image you show us just now of the models, and then you start to hybridizing them or just integrating them into new types of either joint or new types of spaces, and eventually new types of architecture. So my question will be, after this kind of collecting, perhaps there should be a step between these collections and then your own practice. So how do you make sense of your own collection, or how do you start to find your own pattern or find your own way out? Because it's also not enough just to put everything in front of us, right? Because we also need to practice either as an artist, as curator, or as architect or designer. So how do you make sense of them and turn them into a kind of intellectual export? Maybe you could say that for your own projects. Yeah. So how do you make sense of your own collection? That's my questions in short. Yeah.
Maybe I can start, or somehow just simply answering. I think it starts from learning what kind of role each object originally plays. You see what I mean? Like original function or original meaning of the what I discovered or what I found on site or in the industry, and then somehow this is what the original object already has as a one aspect, and then I try to dig into what kind of another aspect or what kind of other function it can have. I try to think about it and then try to connect what kind of relationship it can have to anything unexpected, let's say.
Maybe I can say something. And I really like your summary about my presentation of mapping the map. I didn't realize that until now, but actually as a curator, my research subjects mostly are the artist practice. So, so my collection are artist project. So, but in terms of making sense, and I have to normally to make a narrative, a curatorial narrative, or basically building the structure about how telling the story about exhibition. So, so using map actually, it is how can I say, actually making sense of how I put those artists together. So I think, yeah, this is.
Yeah, maybe I can be the next. I like the way that TY talk about the maps and also the personal perspective of making like working on cartography. Like each map is unique because it projects like how the artist or how the map maker, how they see the world. At the same time, like the different maps, they form like constellation, like the stars in the skies, and as long as you have your own imagination, you will see the astrology sign, like whether they like that is like Aquarius or Leo or whatever. So I think like the constellation will reveal itself, and just like when I always start my research in political confrontation, like I address an issue that is missing something, like the missing, no matter that is a missing a narrative or something is not clear, something is not transparent, or the people engaged in that issue, they're not talked about. Like for example, in my research into Lantau Tomorrow Vision, like this is like a huge, gigantic infrastructure that Hong Kong people or even the people outside Hong Kong, they cannot imagine. An infrastructure project that lasts over 10 years and no one can envision what it would be like, it would become. And all what we got to know is just like figures, numbers, money, causes, or origins of the materials. But when I like went to Xinzhou for the field research, I met a guy, like his driver, who brought me to the artificial dock leading to the sand mining area. The driver told me, the people in Xinzhou, they have been moving from Guangxi to Guangdong for work, for education, and their kids, they learn Cantonese because it's easier to get a work in Guangdong. And nobody really wants to stay in the town, even though the sand mining industry is so flourishing, like locally. Like for some reason, like a huge, gigantic infrastructure, like miles away in Hong Kong, but it influenced the lives of the local people, and those narratives, if I did not interview them, it would just disappear. And that is not unique, like that is universal for the people living along that area. Or there may be other sand mines in other coastal cities in China or Southeast Asia countries. They encounter the same issues. So like for me, like what drives me to investigate or examine this project or how to turn into artwork is just like Vivi, Xiaoshi. she talked about like how to fill the hole with artwork, and visual presentation somehow draw people into themselves, like whether they felt empty about having or not having a home, or they're being displaced. Displaced is not only about like physical move from one place to the other, but also about mental and spiritual displacement. Like you feel like you are living in this place, but you are belonged to somewhere else, or you belong to a parallel temporality, like sometime a time that is not neither from the past or from the future. So maybe you belong to another planet that is not like a pure imagination, but somehow like people I encounter in my research, they feel like they do not belong here. That sense of unbelonging is it intrigued me so much when that is the material that I cannot find from the archival research, like government documents or newspaper. Those ephemeral materials is so important to me. So this is pretty much what is centered in my project, and what I still pursue doing artwork through research.
I think for me, I don't really try to make sense of my data all the time, because I feel like I really try to uncover relationships between these different things, and sometimes I can't find a relationship that are very difficult to make between stuff, but I try to not force myself to do it, because I think sometimes if you let your data sit for a very long time, you start to, if they don't make sense because you found the wrong variant. If you get the new variant, they actually suddenly like make sense. So I guess I just let my material sit. That's my strategy. It's pretty bottom up. I guess I will have like trouble if I'm like a real researcher, because you do have those hypotheses that you need to really transfer into papers and stuff. But I guess as an artist, I can spoil myself by allowing space to let them brew.
So a question from Yang, maybe I can just read for you. For the speakers, I guess whoever is feel you can feel free to jump and answer a question. Why do you think research is important to your practice? And I like the quote, "We are blessed to be able to tell the truth, but we are cursed to not be able to convince people," when Xiaoshi introduced the Saren. It somehow also can reflect the dilemma we face in artistic research. And I think that's why we need to have more discourses on this topic to form a somehow non-conformist category. So it's about the importance of research to your own artistic or creative practice.
I guess I have something to say to this question. Is as artists or designers or architects and or other creative people, we are if we are also researchers, we are actually put in some kind of a periphery of this hierarchy of knowledges, if as even we are knowledge producers, because we are doing it in very just unconventional way. Sometimes it's non-scientific, and sometimes it's just like it can't be put in any of the boxes. But I think But I think that's what's good about contemporary art. It's like in my own romantic version of art, it's like a refugee place where you can bring all kind of researchers that are rejected in different fields, but then they can maybe meet each other and then become something new. But of course it might not, but I would like to give them a try. Although it's true that you might just, even you had the truth, you might just not be able to convince other people. It's also a question of power.
And also probably also it's also a way to make your work also relevant to the greater audience. So perhaps people that are not familiar with your own artistic practice before, they can start to access your way of thinking, or way of looking at things, because the kind of research where you put into before your own before the project or at the beginning of the project. So that's, at least for me, that's how I feel when I start to encounter some of the earlier work that you presented, that without any prior knowledge, perhaps it's just a piece of art encounter in some sort of space. But then if there's some kind of research embedded, and that kind of research is kind of coming from the kind of society or the world we live in, then in some way we can feel the relevance, if not in obvious way. Yeah. Perhaps I know it's kind of late, but perhaps one more question before we close is that how much would you make the research visible in your projects or in your practice? Or how much would you review the black box of the project? Because that's also another question I constantly ask myself, because to a degree, as a designer, you don't really have a complete say standardized method, right? So in a way, it is a kind of in between science and magic. So how much you review the kind of scene behind your magic, I think that's always a difficult questions to think about. So I would like to hear some of your thoughts. Yeah.
Maybe I can have like a very short response. Like for me, research is being like embedded into my practice like ever since I started. It's because I started as like a highly heavily relied on archival research. So research is part of my practice. But at the same time, recently I read about an article about differentiating like artistic research and research-based practice. The former one, maybe we employed like I shouldn't say that, but other than like academic research methodology, we employed other creative methods. Like we can see it in the lately participatory arts. But artistic research-based artistic practice is try to transforming like a research into visual languages or presentations, or through exhibition making, publishing, or other ways to put it into the art context. Like maybe I put it too simple, but I may share one example. I collect like so much materials, but at the same time, I know I cannot put all the information into the artwork, because artwork has its own power, just like Xiaoshi talked about. Once I have like a public screening in a site where it's like a bacteriological and biological test refugee camp in Guangzhou, used by the Japanese during the Japanese occupation in Second World War. My work is about that incident. And but the China government, the mimetic relationship between China and Japan is somehow special right now, particularly after the trade war, and also under the tension of China and Taiwan and US. So like all in all, I have I want to have like a public screening in that former site of the refugee camp, and how I conveyed the local people to let me screen in China, that is like a first class difficulty, because I will get caught by the police just screening a work without getting a permission. But the local people try to help me because they think that is about reminding the memory and also the history of the people suffered. They do not want to, they want to know more, but it's, at the same time, knowledge doesn't really matter. It's about humanity and emotion, which is hidden in the village, hidden in the ground, in the building, in the whole area. And the local government tried to cover that history because the Chinese government want to please Japan. So like the local government recently just changed all the heritage plate, like for in China, if any heritage need to be preserved, they will have like adult plates installed outside the building. But the government changed the plate and rephrase it and try to hide the history of the former refugee camp history. So like the local people helped me to screen my work. Nannies, kids, they ran around. They didn't watch through the whole video, but at the same time, it interested them to initiate and engage them to discuss more about their own memories. So for me, like presenting materials or information is not that important somehow, but artwork can draw people together. So this is my experience.
I don't really review my research. I think art should be an experience, and I really try to recreate my research through experience.
Yeah. Or yeah, as architect, as an architect, like how the project can be shared to, how to say, many kinds of people is very important. I feel always, and in this sense, like somehow, if the research or like how the like a story behind the objects or like a structure matters, I feel it's very important to make it kind of the shareable to some extent. Maybe it doesn't need to be completely shareable because there needs to be so much detailed information or like just a very, how to say, jump between the research and the design. But to some extent, like to make it shareable to some people is important. But at the same time, like as Kai Chung or like Xiaoshi says, like it's, I also feel that it's also important that the architecture is like a good fit to be felt or to be experienced like in a very good way without any knowledge.
So I completely agree with Kai Chung and Xiaoshi about art is not only about sharing knowledge, but mostly an embodiment, not experience. So, but I think for unlike artists, as a curator, we need to think about who's our audience and who you will tell the story to. So it will depend on what kind of media we will choose. Sometimes can be an exhibition and sometimes can be both or maybe seminar or something. So it even it will affect how we write the curatorial text or the description text. So I think, yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm not even sure if I make the appropriate analogy in the question, but your answers are all very inspiring. And it's also very inspiring to see how you embed research in your practice. And last week I went to an exhibition at Floating Project. So it's showing a bunch of scholars slash artists research projects. And then I saw one sentence is how they describe artistic research is when researching, supporting a social movement from within the movement and in chorus with community members, the situation can suddenly shift. I think it's also echoing with the like how important experiences it's in artistic research. Yeah, that's what all the speakers also made comments on. So thank you so much for this very inspiring talk. And I would like to briefly
Thank
wrap
you.
up tonight, and then maybe I will see the recording again, just to review again your talking. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining the seminar, and hope everyone have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.